What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and in our most recent beta build, we saw our first big wave of Conduit tuning. Some were buffed, some were nerfed, and a few were changed entirely. So let's dig into this latest Shadowlands beta build and see what's going on for rogues. So I'm still in the midst of testing all these Conduit changes as I put together this video, so this will be mainly just an overview and recap of the changes that have gone through in this build. Once I get a bit more time to test and play through with all these and see how they perform, I can give a bit more accurate of an opinion of them. However, I can at least explain what I think will be a good or bad change from the numbers we can glean from them. I'll be segmenting this video as per usual to each spec so you can see exactly which things you want to, as well as comments below that will cover any additional hamster brain comments I have or thoughts I had after finishing this video. I, however, will not be covering the Covenant ability specific conduits, mainly because this is actually something for another video that's a work in progress since they've recently changed quite a bit about several of the Covenant abilities. Mashing the two topics together would get long and complicated, and one of the Covenant abilities is kinda really bugged right now, so it doesn't even really work entirely, so that's a thing too. Don't worry, that's quite literally the next video on the menu, so I will be covering the Covenant rogue ability changes as well with their conduits. So we'll start off with Outlaw, whom has had all four of the potency conduits tweaked. The first one I'm not terribly surprised by, though it is a shame. Following the Blade Flurry rank 2 nerf that made it deal damage upon casting it that was nerfed, the Ambidexterity conduit has been chunked down as well. This conduit made our Man Gauche, which is our mastery damage, proc more often while Blade Flurry is active. Originally, this started at 10% and ended at rank 15 with a beefy 24% increased chance on top of our base 30% chance. This has since been reduced by about 70%. Starting at 3% and ending at 7.2%. This honestly isn't terribly surprising, as it was one of the reasons we were casting Blade Flurry even in single target fights. However, with the reduction of potency conduit slots, this will possibly only be used in heavy AoE situations. Up next, Count the Odds received a pretty sizable buff, to the point it seems like it will be one of our best options for DPS conduits. This makes our Ambush and Dispatch have a chance to give us a free roll the bones buff that we don't currently have active for 5 seconds. This percent chance and duration is tripled if the move is cast from stealth. This move used to start at 7% chance and end at 21% chance at rank 15, but has since received a strong increase to 15% at rank 1 and 36% at rank 15. Meaning any vanish ambushes or dispatches cast from stealth or ambush or whatever will give a 15-second roll the bones buff guaranteed once we're above rank 13. Even better, they finally fixed it so you don't lose the Count the Odds roll the bones extra buffs if you roll the bones with one active, which is really good to see. This is probably the most interesting of the bunch so far. Sleight of Hand, you know, that one I keep making fun of? Well, they finally changed it to something hopefully not entirely useless. This was that stupid one that made Roll the Bones sometimes not go on cooldown when you cast it, but has been changed to now simply increase the percent chance of you getting an extra buff when you cast Roll the Bones. I'm still dabbling with this one and trying to see exactly how it works, but as of now it seems like it will increase your likelihood by a base amount of 12%, going up to a maximum of 28% at rank 15. To put that in perspective, you normally have a 79% chance to roll a single buff, a 20% chance to roll 2 buffs, and a 1% chance to roll a 5 buff. I've done some testing with it already, and it seems like I'm rolling more 2 buffs than I thought before with the conduit, but I'm gonna have to do a bit more digging and ask a few of the big brain theory crafters exactly how this is anticipated to work. My only problem with this conduit is that it will kinda defeat the purpose of the loaded dice talent if it becomes a go-to option, meaning we'll still basically be locked into using Alacrity, which is a really boring talent in my opinion. Lastly, we have Triple Threat. This conduit makes your Sinister Strikes have a chance to proc an extra hit after it procs a hit, so yeah, it's a proc within a proc, oh boy. It originally was a 20% chance baseline, scaling up to 35% at rank 15. It's now down to a 9% chance with 23% as the maximum. This should, in theory, still be a pretty okay option even with the nerf, and the old infinite Sinister Strike feedback loop seems to have been fixed so it doesn't just chain Sinister Strikes after Sinister Strikes, unfortunately. Okay, now let's take a look at Assassination. Assassination has had all 4 conduits changed in some ways as well, so we'll start with the entirely revised, well-placed Steel conduit. This originally increased the damage of Shiv and increased your Envenom duration, but was removed. It now causes Shiv to increase nature damage percent by even more. Shiv's baseline damage bonus to nature is 20%, and this conduit will add a minimum of 10% extra damage, scaling up to 24% at rank 15. This will result in a maximum of 44% increased nature damage bonus for the duration of Shiv. This is much better than it was previously, but it was met with the nerf of the other 3 conduits, unfortunately. Lethal Poisons, which increases the instant damage of our lethal poisons, was dropped from a 30% base increase down to 10%. The top end at rank 15 saw an even larger drop, down from 100% to 24%. The balance choices honestly really confuse me sometimes with Blizzard, as Assassination has been the lowest simming of the 3 specs for the entirety of the beta loop. Though I guess I would rather them just increase the damage of the spec baseline than worry about conduits covering that difference. This follows up with the nerf to the only AoE focused conduit, Poisoned Qatar. This increases the damage of Fan of Knives as well as its crit chance. Originally, this started at an even 8% damage and crit chance bonus, going up to 36% for both at rank 15. It has since been dropped to 7% damage and 5% crit chance as the base value. It looks like the crit chance doesn't scale with the rank of the conduit anymore from the in-game tooltip, but I'll look for a bit more info to verify that one. The damage also only scales up to 21% at rank 15. Lastly, we have Maim Mangle. This was the single target oriented conduit that made your mutilates deal extra damage if the target had Garrote active on them already, which they ideally always should. This used to start at a 20% damage increase, scaling up to 60%, but has been dropped to a base value of 9% and reaching 23% at rank 15. This was a pretty big hit, as it was expected to be quite strong in single target, but is now projected to be pretty low on the totem pole. Again, not quite sure why they're going this route unless they plan on just increasing the flat damage of the spec across the board and don't want conduits to cover it for any power creeping issues or anything like that, but yeah. And finally, everyone's favorite sneaky ninja boy spec, Subtlety. Honestly, I could have probably made a video just about this first conduit change because I knew it was gonna happen, and it's probably the biggest nerf of any of the ones on the list, so we'll start with it. Deeper Daggers, the shadow damage bonus conduit, has received a pretty large reduction in overall scaling. This conduit originally made it so that using Eviscerate or Black Powder would increase your shadow damage dealt by 30% for 5 seconds at base rank, scaling to a whopping 150% at rank 15. This has since been dropped to 8% for 8 seconds, scaling up to 19.2% at max rank. This is a pretty massive, although not entirely unexpected, drop in performance, as prior simulations were showing this conduit being more than double the value of the others. However, a pretty excessive drop all at once in my opinion. It does seem to still work with trinkets and whatnot from my preliminary testing though, which is a pretty strong influence on future gearing requirements, as there are numerous shadow damage trinkets and weapon enchants. Perforated Veins is a very middling conduit, as it strictly is only for single target damage. It causes Shadow Strike to increase the damage of your next Backstab or Gloom Blade if talented into it, to be increased by 18% for each Shadow Strike cast, stacking up to 6 times for a maximum damage increase of 108% at base rank 1. At rank 15, this will result in a total increase of 46% per stack, stacking 6 times again, so right around 276% increase. Not exactly super huge since it's only once every 6 times you use a Shadow Strike, so I'm not sure how viable this will be since it takes even more stacks to reach basically close to the same value it was before. Lastly, we have Planned Execution. This was another one that took a pretty good hit on the top end of scaling, but shouldn't be quite as noticeable early on. This conduit makes it so that when you activate Symbols of Death, you'll gain an increased critical strike percentage of 4% baseline, moving up to 9.6% at rank 15. This is not a big of a drop off immediately, as it started at 6% before, but it used to scale to 34% at max rank, which is a pretty big difference. What I personally think all this means is that they basically threw in most of these conduits somewhat haphazardly, as they weren't planning on testing conduit ranking right off the bat, and people data mined them at really high ranks early on. I was very skeptical of conduits that increased damage by as much as they did initially, and I'm actually glad to see that they've brought all of these in line to a certain degree. While on paper, prior to launch, these will sound like terrible nerfs, the big thing to remember is that they're trying to get all these actually within a closer range of tolerance than we expected, which is genuinely a good thing for the balance of the game. Nerfs never sound good, but since it isn't live, I'd rather them do the guinea pig testing on us for buffs and nerfs so we can see how the specs all even out in performance, rather than end up with a Zool 2.0 or something 3 months from now with another dead spec that lasts for 2 years like that. Anyways, I hope this little update / overview video helps keep you in the loop on the changes going on with rogues in the Shadowlands beta. I plan on covering the Covenant ability and Covenant specific conduits in the next video, don't worry, as those will be a doozy and require a bit of testing to see exactly what these changes will mean for our plans in terms of soulbind trees. If you enjoyed this video, then any likes, comments, or new subscribers are all fantastic things of you to consider doing. If you're new around to my little corner of the YouTube algorithm, then I'd like to welcome you to come check out the rest of the channel. I do new uploads every week down a variety of content, covering things like beta updates, guides, add-ons, week ors, and plenty of rogue-specific stuff. As always, my immense gratitude to my regular viewers, commenters, subscribers, and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.